This is the best and worst of 3D Mario. What's going on, guys? It's your boy SONICSTA back again with another video, and in today's video, we are going to go through what I personally believe is the best 3D Mario game and ranking all the ones that follow behind it. All of these games will be ranked on the four same categories: story, gameplay, characters, and music. So without any further introduction, let's just jump right off into the video because we have a lot to discuss here. Beginning chronologically by release year, we have Super Mario 64, and the first thing we'll discuss is the story. Now, the story for Super Mario 64 is actually pretty simple. It begins with Peach sending an invitation to Mario to come over to the castle as she has baked a cake for him. And as soon as Mario arrives, he finds out that Bowser screwed up everything. Pretty much no one is in the castle, and all the power stars are hidden inside these paintings. So Mario has to go through each painting, get a power star, and save Princess Peach. You see, there's actually some uniqueness behind this story. We don't really see Mario jumping through paintings normally to go through different worlds and complete different levels. Normally he's just going from world to world literally, but this is sort of like a metaphorical sense. He's traveling to a different world through a painting, which I think is actually pretty cool. But in my personal opinion, that's pretty much as far as the story I think goes. You see, it begins with Peach offering Mario a chance to come over to the castle and try some cake, but you'll see this is actually a common trend in 3D Mario games. This is normally how things are pretty much set up all the time. And I'd even say this happens in 2D games as well, in a quite frequent basis. However, the argument can be made that Super Mario 64 kind of pioneered this whole trope, so I guess you can give it points for that. But anyway, let's move on to talk about the characters in this game. First of all, and most obviously, we have Mario, who is the main and only playable character. Then we have Toad, Princess Peach, and Bowser. For the most part, that's your main core group of characters. Out of every game we're going to be talking about in this video, I do believe that this game probably has the most bare bones amount of characters. However, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Rather than showing the same old characters we're all accustomed to, this game provides tons of new ones that we can actually get to know. While I don't think most of these characters became fan favorites, I do think they added a lot to the story in actually kind of world expanding. We got to see the world of Super Mario kind of grow and expand just off these small interactions. Meeting characters like Koopa the Quick and Bob-omb Buddy were always a fun experience. And now with that out of the way, let's get to the most crucial part of an entire game, the gameplay. How does the game work? When I first played this game, I have to be totally honest, I felt like it was a bit clunky, like Mario is a bit fast, but also a little stiff at the same time, if that makes any sense at all. But this criticism also comes from someone who's so accustomed to the Super Mario Odyssey and Super Mario 3D World formats, where it just kind of feels so smooth and quick. Whereas in this game, which was made in several years before these games I talked about prior, is going to feel a bit more clunky, but I don't think that's its fault inherently. Personally, I think the game itself looks pretty good, and I do think that the world design is actually kind of fun to look at. You see, you've got all these little square planes, and Mario kind of has to run around them and do whatever Marios do. Speaking of the worlds themselves, there are a total of 15 of them, but in each of them you have 6 individual levels to do. The levels themselves are actually pretty distinct for the most part depending on each world, but for every single world I believe there is at least one red coin level. But of course, you don't have to play every single level in order to beat the game. All you need to do is have 70 stars total, and thus you can go meet Bowser and save Peach, and then beat the game. But if you are a completionist and you do want to collect all 120 stars, you sure can, and then you will be greeted by Yoshi at the top of the castle. Of course, you can't ride him or do anything with him, but he can still talk to you, and that's pretty cool. But anyway, let's move on to talk about the music. Now you see, this may not have my personal favorite 3D Mario soundtrack, but I still do believe it actually hits in all the right spots. It's got music ranging from Dire Dire Docks all the way up to Cool Cool Mountain. Pretty much what I'm trying to say here is, it can get from really calm and relaxing to pretty upbeat and fast paced. To be totally honest, this category is probably going to be the hardest for me to rank because I really do enjoy the music from all of these games as a whole, but there is one that I believe stands tall among all of them, and we'll get into that later. But anyway, that's all I'm going to say about Super Mario 64. Now let's move on to the next game chronologically, which is Super Mario Sunshine. The story for Super Mario Sunshine goes as follows. Mario, Peach, Toadsworth, and a bunch of Toads go on a vacation to Isle Delfino. As soon as the group lands on Isle Delfino, they find out that someone has vandalized the entire island, and that person looks a lot like Mario. So in an unfair trial, Mario is sentenced to clean the entire island and restore it to its former glory. and of course he is not allowed to leave unless he finishes his job. And then we find out later in the story that the person who pretends he is Mario is actually Bowser Jr., Bowser's son. Not to mention, this is also Bowser Jr.'s first appearance in the entire franchise. And the reason Bowser Jr. is causing such catastrophe is because he wants Peach to be his mother. So Mario now has two jobs, to save Al Delfino and also to save Princess Peach from the clutches of Bowser and Bowser Jr. As far as stories goes, this actually might be one of my favorites in the entire series. It's got a uniqueness about it that doesn't really feel like the Super Mario series has really dived into. It's not complex, nor is it at all hard to follow, but it's got a deepness about it that I feel like goes beyond just Bowser kidnapping Peach. Not to mention, it's also really nice to get a break from the all-so-wonderful Mushroom Kingdom. But anyway, let's move on to talk about the characters in this game, such as, like we said before, Super Mario 64, Mario, Peach, Toads, and also Bowser. But we also have new characters like Bowser Jr. and Toadsworth. Oh, and also, not to mention, like Super Mario 64, this game also has Yoshi, but in this case, he's actually a main core structure of the gameplay. In order to collect a lot of the shine sprites in this game, you will need a Yoshi, and that is what he's used for. In summary, I really do enjoy the main cast of core characters in this game here. I actually like it better than that in Super Mario 64. But also, the side characters in this game I think are a little bit more entertaining than that in 64 as well. The Peanutas, Nokis, and also who could forget PD Piranha make the game all the more appetizing. I felt like even though there were several encounters with PD Piranha, I didn't think any of them went to waste as they all kept the same level of intensity or increased it. That said, when it comes to the characters and the story, I definitely think that Sunshine beats out 64. But what about the gameplay? While I was playing the floodless levels of Super Mario Sunshine, it almost felt like Mario played the exact same way he does in Super Mario 64, almost as if it was a direct copy and paste, and that's not a bad thing. However, the game primarily relies on the usage of FLUDD, which I think can kind of be hit or miss. Having played and finished both games, I can tell you with ease that Super Mario Sunshine is a much harder game than Super Mario 64, and I think that's primarily because of FLUDD. A lot of the game requires you to aim at certain parts of bosses or levels in order to get through them, and I think the aiming feature can be really stiff sometimes and also kind of a hassle as it slows down gameplay. That said, you would think the floodless levels would be easier, but the converse is true. For the most part, these levels are actually so hard I almost wish that I actually had FLUDD back in the first place. I say all of this to say the game is very challenging, but that doesn't make it bad. I actually found a lot of fun in it, and I do think it's still a very good game. Albeit, I believe it's a bit worse than Super Mario 64. That said though, I do think the soundtrack is pretty great. While I personally believe the Super Mario 64 soundtrack is pretty iconic, I think the Sunshine one just sounds a little bit better on the ears. I'm not to say 64 sounds bad by any stretch of the imagination, but Sunshine just has bangers, and I think that should not go unrecognized. But anyway, that's enough about Super Mario Sunshine. Let's get to the next 3D Mario game, which is Super Mario Galaxy, a fan favorite. The story for Super Mario Galaxy begins the exact same way 64 does, in which Mario gets an invitation from Princess Peach. This is exactly what I was talking about earlier. Anyway, the Star Festival is taking place in the Mushroom Kingdom, and Mario goes to Peach's castle to receive something that Peach has for him. However, Bowser interrupts the Mushroom Kingdom Star Festival activities, and he takes the entire castle into space. And then Peach is taken away from Mario yet again. Mario tries to chase after the castle but gets knocked away by Kamek and somehow ends up meeting Rosalina in the process. Thus, the two of them will set off to collect the Power Stars and also save Princess Peach. On the surface, this appears to be your usual Bowser kidnapping Peach story, but it goes a lot deeper than that because, well, for number one, they're in space. It isn't like Bowser just took Peach and ran about 8 worlds away. He went to space, so I think that's a lot more fun and more interesting. Not to mention, this game also gives us Rosalina, a new character who really turns the tide in the entire game and becomes a staple in the entire franchise. As the game progresses, you learn more about her, and that makes her a ton more interesting. And by default, it makes the game more interesting in itself. But anyway, since we're already on the topic, let's talk about the characters. Firstly, we have Mario, Peach, Bowser, and of course, Rosalina. We also have characters like Bowser Jr., Polari, and the baby Luma. And also, we still have the Toads and Lumas as a whole. And if you thought that was enough, we also have Luigi as well, and he's a playable character if you collect all 120 stars. If you couldn't tell already, from 64 to Super Mario Galaxy, you can definitely tell that there's improvement in the story as well as the characters. As these three games continue to grow and develop as 3D Mario games, they continue to get more deep in the story as well as with characters. And I feel like every time a character is used in this game, it doesn't feel like it's a wasted effort. Every character is put in an instrumental way in order to further escalate the story. In summary, it feels like every single character has purpose. But you know what else would have purpose? If you guys hit that like and subscribe button on this video, because your boy would really appreciate it. But anyway, let's move on to talk about the gameplay Super Mario Galaxy displays. In comparison to its older brother Super Mario 64 and Sunshine, I feel like this game runs a lot smoother, and I think for that reason, it can be a lot more fun to play. Unlike Sunshine, this game really doesn't have much of a gimmick at all other than shaking the Wii Remote to do a spin attack, but can you really classify that as somewhat of a gimmick? And even if you were to classify it as somewhat of a gimmick at all, it wouldn't be on the same scale that Sunshine had it with Flood, which I think is actually a good thing. In the case of Flood, it felt like Flood was actually slowing down the gameplay, but in the case of the spin attack here used in Galaxy, it feels like it's actually either speeding it up or keeping it the same consistency, which I actually much prefer. Moving on, however, let's talk a bit about the boss battles, which I think are probably one of the best in the series. These bosses have a lot of actually really engaging and climactic scenes that I would actually say it capitalizes on what Sunshine did really well, and that was make it feel intense, and Galaxy did just that. And then it comes down to the music, which I actually think is done just as well as everything else that I've already previously mentioned. So it would kind of be an understatement to say that the music is better than that of Sunshine and 64. Anyway, let's see how the sequel to Mario Galaxy holds up, Super Mario Galaxy 2. In my opinion, the story is probably the worst out of everything I've mentioned thus far. The story for Super Mario Galaxy 2 is almost a direct copy and paste from Super Mario Galaxy 1. Whereas Peach invites Mario over for the Star Festival, Bowser ruins the Star Festival and takes Peach into space, Mario follows Peach into space hoping to save her, and then actually ends up meeting someone else named Lubba. Now, Rosalina is not a major role in this game at all, which is kind of deflating because you figured that the Galaxy line would kind of be hers to take over, but not in this case. Don't get me wrong, she's there from time to time, but not nearly as much as some of the other characters. And speaking of which, let's get into them. So for our playable characters, we have Mario and Luigi, who's actually playable partway through the game. Then you have Toad, Lubba, Rosalina, Peach, Bowser, and Bowser Jr. That is your main group of core characters, although like I said before, Rosalina does not play as prominent as a role as she did in Mario Galaxy. Personally, I would say that this game definitely has the worst story out of all the ones I listed just because it's a direct copy and paste, and I'm not really here for all that. As far as characters go, it's basically the same thing as Galaxy 1, so again, it's basically just another copy and paste, but I mean, it's not that great, but we'll let that one slide, I guess. Now, let's move on to the gameplay. And in order to talk about the gameplay, we do have to mention one important character that I forgot to mention earlier, who actually deserves their own segment, which is Yoshi. He is the primary factor that makes this game that much different from Galaxy 1. A large portion of Galaxy 2 relies heavily on Yoshi, as indicated by the box art. And anyway, in these levels, you have to do a lot of aiming so you can just kind of grapple onto different locations to get to where you need to be. This is what I classify as a gimmick. You see, I don't mind the whole idea of motion controls or aiming to do stuff with the Wii, but this relies heavily on it, and I felt like it kinda got a little repetitive. So while Yoshi doesn't add a whole lot to the story, he does add a lot to the gameplay, and I think that in itself is why Galaxy 2 is set apart from Galaxy 1. Now, I know the popular opinion tends to be that Galaxy 2 is a better game than Galaxy 1, to which I actually do agree to some extent, in which the gameplay is fundamentally a lot smoother than that in Galaxy 1, but I just don't really like the Yoshi feature all that much. So me personally, I'm willing to sacrifice the new power-ups as well as smoothness in order to have what I would consider to be a more fun game and to get rid of that Yoshi feature. Personally, I would say that at its core, Galaxy 2 could have been a much better game than Galaxy 1 had the Yoshi feature not been there in the first place, but that is my opinion. As far as music goes, Galaxy 2 does manage to come on top of every game mentioned thus far, including Galaxy 1. Galaxy 2, in summary, is a great game. It's just not my personal favorite. Anyway, let's now move on to what I personally believe might be the most underrated 3D Mario game of all time, and that is Super Mario 3D Land. In all honesty, I kind of forgot this game existed, but anyway, the story goes as follows. A storm happens in the Mushroom Kingdoms, and super leaves are blown everywhere in sight, and Bowser in the chaos kidnaps Peach and takes some of the super leaves and gives his army all these Tanuki leaves, as well as himself, and flees the kingdom. So it's up to Mario to go save Peach yet again. In essence, the story is basically just your regular Bowser kidnapping Peach story, and that's about it. So in my opinion, this story is the worst by far, and unfortunately the characters as a whole just aren't much better. We only have Mario, Peach, Toad, and Bowser, and also Luigi if you get to the end of the game. And if you couldn't tell already, these characters are just as bare bones as the story itself. However, I would say that this game actually does thrive pretty well on pretty great gameplay. I really enjoyed playing this game after several years, and I thought it was actually really fun. The levels are actually pretty short, and thus the game isn't as long to finish as most other Mario games are. But one of the things I think is really cool about this game is that it reintroduced old power-ups and brought them into the new times. But most specifically, the Super Leaf, which in other words is just Tanuki Mario. Now we can talk a bit about the music, which in all honesty is pretty bland. It's not anything kind of jaw-dropping or anything like Galaxy or Sunshine, but it's there. That's really all about it. Now, I know I said this game was underrated, but it's underrated to an extent. You see, it's underrated in the sense that the gameplay is very good, but doesn't get talked about, but everything else about it is kinda just, take it or leave it. Everything that happens in this game pretty much happens in almost every other 3D Mario game, but just better. But this game still does it good, nevertheless. Anyway, let's move on to 3D Land's younger yet better brother, which is 3D World. The story for this game begins with Mario, Luigi, Peach, and Toad outside the Mushroom Kingdom during a festival as they see a clear warp pipe. Mario and Luigi begin to fix the warp pipe, and then out comes a green Sprixie princess. She begins to tell them that Bowser wreaking havoc in their kingdom, and then immediately after, she is kidnapped by Bowser. Then Peach, Mario, Luigi, and Toad fall down the clear warp pipe and try to rescue her, and thus begins the game Super Mario 3D World. Yeah, this isn't the best 3D Mario story, but it certainly isn't bad. It's really nice to know that for once Peach isn't getting kidnapped and it's actually someone else, and they're actually exploring something else other than the Mushroom Kingdom. Putting that aside though, I'd say it's on par with 64 because not much different happens here other than going to a different world. Story aside though, let's talk a bit about the characters. Now of course we have Mario, Peach, Luigi, Toad, the Sprixie Princesses, and Bowser, but we also have Rosalina, who is an unlockable character at the end of the game. That completes most of the normal gameplay characters, but we also have the gameplay of Captain Toad, which eventually got its own game later on down the line. Even though this game does have a collection of some of the greatest characters Nintendo has made for the Mario series, or at least the most popular ones that is, aside from Daisy of course, these characters don't manage to make the story go beyond what it currently is, and that is bare bones. There's nothing really deep about this story at all, it's pretty straightforward, and you don't even really have to know it to know what's going on. That said, the gameplay is really the thing that makes this ship sail. I love this game because it can be so fun to be played with other people. Unfortunately, I had to record all the gameplay by myself, so it was a little less fun than it usually is, but hey, I still had a good time with it. Of course, I do believe that multiplayer makes this game a whole lot better, and I feel like without it, you might as well just be playing something along the lines of Galaxy or Galaxy 2. You see, all the games I previously mentioned were basically meant with a single player person in mind. Galaxy 1 and Galaxy 2 do have 2 players available, but unless you feel like aiming and shooting star bits, you're not going to have a whole lot of fun. What makes this game even more fun is the fact that all of these characters have different gameplay styles. Mario is your generic character, Toad is your fast character, Luigi jumps the highest, Peach can float in the air, and also Rosalina can do a spin attack. You have variety. Playing this game with another person can make it all the more fun because you two can just do 2 different things at the same time and still make it all work. But anyway, let's move on to the last category, which is the music. And to be totally honest, this music is a lot better than that in 3D Land because it's actually memorable, but I just don't know if it's on the same status as Galaxy or Galaxy 2. Maybe it's somewhere between Sunshine and Galaxy, somewhere around that area. Anyway, let's now move on to one of, if not the most ambitious Mario title of all time, Super Mario Odyssey. The story of this game revolves around Bowser preparing a wedding between him and Peach, and it is a forceful marriage. Mario, of course, is trying to stop this wedding with the help of his newfound friend, Cappy. And the good thing is, Cappy actually needs Mario's help as well because he's trying to rescue his sister, Tiara. So Mario and Cappy have to travel all across the globe using the Odyssey ship, always just to be one step behind Bowser in his wedding plans. Although this may appear as your traditional Bowser kidnapping Peach story, this one definitely has a bit more bite to its bark. The reason being is because normally when Bowser kidnaps Peach, we don't really hear or see from him ever again. However, in this game, we see him actively on the move trying to gather all the pieces together to make sure he can actually marry Peach. It's almost like we're seeing the story unfold right before our eyes what's going to happen next, and I love it. It feels like an active chase trying to catch Bowser, and that's what I really like about it. Not only that, but we also get to explore some of Mario's history with other characters in the past, like Pauline, which now we should probably talk about the characters. The major characters of this game are Mario, Peach, Bowser, Cappy, Tiara, Captain Toad, the Brutals, and Pauline. While I really do enjoy this character selection, there's one thing that really doesn't make any sense to me at all and kind of actually irritates me. You see, Bowser is trying to prepare a whole wedding for him and Peach, yet his son is not going to be in attendance, which really throws me off. Not to mention, he would rather have the Brutals there, characters we just met, over the Koopalings, which just makes more sense since we've known them for history, as well as himself. It doesn't make any sense, but I guess I'm gonna let it slide. Either way, unlike the past games we just talked about, 3D World and 3D Land, the characters in this game actually do drive the story heavily, which I really do enjoy. Almost every single character in this game except Mario has speaking lines, which really helps escalate the story faster and makes it more interesting. But anyway, now let's move on to talk about the gameplay, which is the most important part, as I said earlier. Now, I love this gameplay more than any other 3D Mario game for the most part. You see, it does have one major gimmick, and that's the whole aesthetic of Mario capturing enemies, but I don't think that's bad because, if anything, it actually really speeds up the gameplay because you can do so many different things with it. Even though capturing enemies for the most part is not really an option and you kinda have to do it, it's something that you actually want to do. I found myself really enjoying doing this because it gave Mario a lot more options in terms of combat, as well as just traveling to different locations. So yes, even though this game does rely heavily on this one gimmick, I have to say I really love it for doing that, because this gimmick is super fun to use. In all honesty, I have to say that Odyssey probably has the best gameplay out of every single game I've listed thus far, but the question is, does it have the best music? Personally, I really couldn't choose between Galaxy 2 or Odyssey and having a better soundtrack. Both of these have great music, and I really had a hard time picking between the two, so I think the best thing I'm going to have to do is just say that it's a draw between them. However, the next game is going to have the best music that we're going to talk about here, and that is Bowser's Fury. But before we can get to the music of Bowser's Fury, let's talk a bit about the story. Now, honestly, the story is kind of hard to find in itself, but let me tell you how it happens. You see, Bowser Jr. accidentally paints on his father black paint, and then he becomes this giant monster. And as demonstrated in Super Mario Sunshine, we know that this wasn't some ordinary paintbrush, this was a magic paintbrush, and that's why Bowser was able to grow so big, and become very malicious, even towards his son. Now, Junior freaks out at the size of his father and summons Mario to come into the world of Lake Labcat, and then the two of them have to fight Bowser and turn him back to normal. Now, that was just a story in brief. I go into a lot deeper detail in a different video, which you should definitely go check out. But anyway, the story in this game isn't all that bad, but it also isn't that great. Like, I hate how the fact that I kinda had to hunt for this story and the game didn't just outrightly tell you, but hey, I guess that's just how things work, and it was technically kind of like a DLC to Super Mario 3D World. Nonetheless, I thought the callbacks to Super Mario Sunshine were pretty interesting to say the least. Anyway, now let's talk about the characters in this game, which there aren't a whole lot of. You have Mario, Bowser Jr., Bowser, and Plessy. All the characters that I just listed aside from Bowser are actually playable in this game. Plessy you can ride on like Super Mario 3D World, and Bowser Jr. is actually a second playable character if you're player 2. The interesting thing about this story actually is the sheer fact that Bowser Jr. is actually fighting his dad in this game. Now, of course, Mario does most of the heavy lifting, but the fact that Bowser Jr. is actually working together with Mario to fight his father is a very interesting concept that I would have never expected to see. And then of course you have the creation of Giga Cat Mario, which is also very splendid. As far as the characters driving the story, I guess you can say they do because Junior does most of the communicating, but even still, it's not a whole lot of story to really go over, so you don't really need this. It is funny though to see how just disinterested Mario is the entire time during this game. It doesn't even seem like he wants to be here or help out Bowser Jr. It's just kinda funny. As far as stories goes, it's not that bare bones because for once Peach is not in this story at all, so I put it behind Sunshine in terms of quality. The gameplay, however, is a completely different story. I actually believe the gameplay is on par with that of Super Mario Odyssey. It's almost as if they took the exact same 3D World format and kind of meshed it together with Super Mario Odyssey. In my opinion, this should be the future of 3D Mario games. It has all the irregular Mario qualities about it, and it still feels like an open world game. You have all the power-ups here, and you also have a second playable character, unlike anything just shooting star bits. This is a really cool concept, and I would love to see them expand it going forward in the future with the next 3D Mario game. Anyway, let's talk about the music, which I honestly think feels nothing like any other Mario game before, and I think for that reason, it's really amazing. For some reason, it feels to me like it's some sort of Pixar level quality type stuff, especially when the credits roll. That song in the background during those credits is amazing. I can listen to that to no end. In my opinion, Bowser's Fury probably has the best Super Mario 3D soundtrack. But judging by how much everything pretty much stacked up during this entire video, Bowser's Fury is probably my favorite 3D Mario game. Odyssey is probably a close second, followed by Galaxy and then 3D World. Then Galaxy 2, 64, Sunshine, and then you have 3D Land. Honestly, it was really hard to rank these games because I just find them all to be so amazing, at least in their own right. They're just great games, and I feel like everyone should definitely play some Mario games, at least the 3D ones, in the near future. But anyway, those are just my thoughts. What's going on, guys? Thank you all so much for sticking around to the end of the video. Now I want to hear from you. What is your favorite 3D Mario game? Let me know in the comment section down below. I'd love to see what you guys have to say. I really hope you enjoyed this video too, because this was like a totally different format that I'm not really used to, and it was a Mario video because I generally make Sonic videos, and also I really love Mario, so I'd love to show that Mario love here on this channel a lot more than I already do. But anyway, before I go here, I want to take the time to shout out some of my amazing channel members. Thank you all again so much for supporting me and my channel. You guys are truly the best. I tell you, I wake up every morning praising the Lord for amazing people like you guys. I could not do it without you. Videos like these would definitely not be possible without you. So thank you all again so very much. If you're interested in becoming a member of my channel, there will be a link in the description down below. But if you want to support me through other means, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate it. It would help me go a super long way. But anyway, thank you all again so much for watching. This is your boy SONICSTA signing out. Have a super blessed day, y'all.
Why are you playing that trash?